Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? Great, great. I just want to first double check if you can hear me clearly and if you can see the blackboard on your screens. All right, sounds good. Great, great. All right, so today we are going to be starting with answering any questions that you have related to chapter 3 first, and then if you do have any questions related to the tissues related to chapter 4, we're going to answer this next. And at the end, I will be answering a set of questions with you as a review for the tissues lab exam. All right, so here, review for tissues lab exam. All right, so let's start first with any questions that you have related to chapter 3 first, which covers the cells, the membrane transport, the mitotic division in the cell cycle. You have any questions related to chapter 3 first? All right, I'm waiting, Rachel. Anyone else has questions related to chapter 3? So as a quick reminder of what is covered in chapter 3, we first discussed the cell membrane structure. We discussed that the cell membrane is formed of lipids and proteins, and the most common type of lipids is the phospholipids. We discussed the two main types of proteins that enter in the structure of the cell membrane, and those were the integral proteins and the peripheral proteins. Then in this chapter, we discussed the cell membrane transport. And the cell membrane transport was either an active membrane transport or a passive membrane transport. As examples of passive membrane transport, if you remember, we've discussed the simple diffusion. If I'm conducting a solute, that is lipid soluble. And we discussed the carrier-mediated facilitated diffusion. Channel-mediated facilitated diffusion. As the last type of passive transport we've discussed was the osmosis. The active membrane transport, we've discussed the sodium potassium ATPase pump, and we've discussed the vesicular transport. After we completed our discussion of the cell membrane transport, we've discussed the organelles. And if you remember, we've discussed the two types of organelles located in the cytoplasm, and those are the membranous and the non-membranous organelles. And this included the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, included the ribosomes, which are responsible for the formation of the proteins. And if you remember, we discussed that we do have two types of ribosomes, either free ribosomes or membrane-bound ribosomes. And we've discussed the endoplasmic reticulum, which was either the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which function going to be different according to what organ is it located in. So if it was located in the liver, it was responsible for the detoxification of the toxins, metabolization of the drugs. It was responsible to allow the metabolization of the fats. And in the muscles, as another example on here, for the function of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, it was responsible for the storage and release of calcium, responsible for the muscle contraction. We've also discussed the rough endoplasmic reticulum. This is the type of endoplasmic reticulum that has ribosomes on its outer surface, and this is what allows it to produce two types of proteins. The proteins that would be either packaged, that remain inside the cytoplasm, integrated within the cell membrane, or exported to the outside of the cell. This was a function of the rough endoplasmic reticulum. We've discussed the Golgi apparatus that is responsible to concentrate, trim, and package the proteins that will be either exported, that will either be integrated within the cell membrane, or that will remain inside vesicles in your cytoplasm. We'll discuss the lysosomes, which are the vesicles containing the hydrolytic enzymes that will serve to digest. And we've talked about what are the possible things that we can digest by the lysosomes. We discussed the non-functional organelles, the protein in the bone for us to be able to release the calcium from the bone, the bacteria that the macrophages will be ingesting going to be destroyed and broken down by the lysosomes. The cell itself, if the cell is not functioning, it can destroy itself, and we call this as apoptosis. We've seen another type of organelles. This is my peroxisomes, which are vesicles that contain, this time, oxidative and reductive enzymes, and those are going to be responsible to detoxify the free radicals and make them more chemically stable. We've discussed the cytoskeleton. This includes the microfilaments and the microtubules, centrioles forming the centrosome. We'll discuss then the nucleus formed by the nuclear membrane, which is a double membrane that contains the nuclear pores, allowing the nuclear elements to move in and out of the nucleus to the cytoplasm and from the cytoplasm to the inside of the nucleus. The outer membrane was continuous with the rough endoplasmic reticulum, if you remember. And we've discussed the nucleolus, which is the site for the production of the rough endoplasmic reticulum that enter for the ribosomal RNA that enters in the structure of my ribosomes. And finally, we've discussed the cell cycle. This includes the interphase, the mitotic phase, and if you remember, the mitosis was divided into prophase, then it goes to the metaphase, anaphase, and then telophase. And starting from late anaphase, you're going to start splitting the cell into two, which is the cytokinesis. We also discussed the structure of the DNA and RNA and how the transcription and translation are taking place. So this is a quick overview of the different topics that have been discussed in this chapter. So I see Rachel here got a question. So for passive membrane transport, the transport process according to the Cubank question answer is the movement of the substance down its concentration gradient, but I don't think this is correct. According to the quiz, it counted it wrong. So on the quiz, it's wrong on the quiz itself. All right. So this question is answered wrong in the quiz itself. So this is going to be modified. All right. So the question here, the passive membrane transport is the movement of a substance down its concentration gradient. So it moves from high concentration gradient to low concentration gradient. This is what we call a passive membrane transport. And it's correct in the Cubank, but it seems that it's wrong on the quiz itself. So I will be modifying this. All right. This is the only questions that you've got. All right, so any questions related to chapter 4? Any questions related to chapter 4, the tissues? Any questions related to chapter 4? Edema. Edema is taking place due to a vasodilation And this is the accumulation of the fluid in your lamina propria, which is formed by the areolar connective tissue. All right, so what this means? So if I have any kind of irritation, trauma, infection, this enhances the immune system to release inflammatory mediators. And one of the most common inflammatory mediators that we do release, it's going to be the histamine. So the histamine effect is to dilate the arterioles. So looking at the connections here between the different vessels, if this is an artery, the artery splits into small vessels. Those are called the capillaries. This is where I get in contact with the cells to allow the gas exchange, nutrient exchange, and wastes to be transported in and out of my bloodstream from my tissue cells. And after I perform the exchange, this blood is going to be drained out of my tissues like this into veins, or the small veins. Those are my venules. So I got the blood in by the arteries, arterioles, which are the small arteries, and I drain the blood out through the venules. What the histamine is going to do, it's going to be dilating those arterioles. So rather than bringing this amount of blood in here, I will dilate the arteriole like this. So I will be bringing much more blood to my capillaries. And as I bring more blood to the capillaries, this will cause the leakage of more fluid from my capillaries in my tissues. More fluid into the tissues. And as I get more fluid into the tissues, this is what will cause the edema, the accumulation of fluid within my tissue. That's why if I got an inflammation, it's going to cause swelling, and it's going to be red, hot, and tender. Why? Because I dilated the arterioles. This caused the release of more fluid to the outside. Is there any other way I can get edema other than from inflammation? This is the most common reason. Other reasons might be due to the loss of the osmotic effect of the blood. So if this is my liver like this, the liver is producing a protein that keeps the fluid inside your blood vessels called the albumin. So the albumin has an osmotic effect. What again is meant by osmosis? It's my ability to pull the fluid in. I am pulling the water. So the albumin is going to be pulling the water from the tissues back to the blood vessels. And this is what I need at this point. So when I'm draining the blood back to the venules, I need to recapture this fluid back to my vessels before I leave. So if I don't have albumin, because for example, a person has liver cirrhosis, his liver is not working as good as it should be. So I'm not having albumin. So even without dilating those arterioles, the fluid gonna be moving outside, but won't be recaptured back into my vessels because I'm missing the albumin. I don't have albumin. If I don't have albumin, I'm not pulling the fluid back, so the fluid gonna remain here outside in my tissues. And this is what will cause the swelling, the edema. Other reasons will be due to fluid overload. So if a person has a kidney problem, for example, the kidney is meant to release the fluids out in the urine. So if the fluid accumulates in my blood vessels, more than what I actually supposed to keep in the vessel, so the fluid will not tolerate to remain at a high pressure within the vessel, so it will escape to stay between my tissue cells outside of the vessels. And this accumulation of the fluid outside of the blood vessels between the tissue cells is what will result in edema. So major reasons for edema on here will include the dilation of the vessels in case of inflammation, in liver problems due to not having enough albumin, reduction in the osmotic pressure, and if a person has a kidney problem, also might result in edema because of the accumulation of fluids that was supposed to be released out by the kidney in the urine. So if I'm not releasing this fluid out in the urine, it's going to remain in my blood vessels. And if it remains in my blood vessels, it will be leaving the vessels to accumulate within my tissues. All right, does this answer your question, Monkisha? All right. So for Emily, I'm just curious if there is an easier way to memorize the locations of the tissue. I can identify them with no issue. I just tend to forget the locations. So my recommendation is always to keep it logical, so you don't forget it. Try to make it as logical as it can be. Like, let me pull up here. All right, so for example, if we go to the epithelium, different types of epithelium. So let's review together the locations. So simple squamous epithelium. I have one row of flat cells, one layer of flat cells. So where do I actually need to have one layer of flat cells? If I do want to have a minimal resistance, very minimal resistance. So think of it, what are the sites that I need to have minimal resistance in? All right, so I will think here, I will remember, yes, I did read that I need minimal resistance, or it's located in the blood vessels, lining the blood vessels. So I need minimal resistance against the blood flow. So simple squamous epithelium is lining my blood vessels. I need simple squamous epithelium to be lining my air sacs. Why my air sacs? Because it's gonna be allowing the diffusion of the gases in and out of the air sacs. So I need minimal resistance. I don't want to have large cells on here that will be limiting the passage of the gases in and out of my air sacs. So another location is going to be the air sacs of the lungs are lined with simple squamous epithelium. Same as the blood circulation, I need a minimal resistance, so it's going to be lining the chambers of the heart. So lining the chambers of the heart from inside is going to be simple squamous epithelium. Think of minimal resistance. It's so logical on here because all of those sites are going to require minimal resistance. Where else? In the kidney. glomeruli of the kidney. If you remember, I need minimal resistance to allow the filtration of the fluid from my blood into my kidney tubules. So those are the most important sites that I need to remember on here, and all will have a logical reason why they will be located in those sites. So this is the way I think of it. So I think, why should I keep one row of flat cells in those locations? And if it makes sense, it's going to be much easier for me to recall what are the sites that will require this minimal resistance. All right. Something like simple cuboidal and simple columnar. This might be confusing a little because they almost have the same action, which is secretion and absorption. So simple cuboidal epithelium. Simple cuboidal epithelium, if you remember, we've seen it lining those tubules, the rounded tubules next to one another. One row of cuboidal cells like this. So where I do have those tubules rounded next to one another, lined all from inside by one row of cuboidal cells, these are my kidney tubules. And why do I need absorption and secretion in the kidney tubules? Because you need to modify the structure of the urine. So I've got here urine, I've got here blood, and I want stuff to freely to be pulled from the urine to be conducted to the blood, and I want stuff from the blood to be conducted to the urine. So who will be able to allow this to take place? It's going to be a type of epithelium that has the ability to allow absorption and secretion. Less logical. It's going to be less logical location here for simple cuboidal. It's going to be the surface of the ovary, for example. Surface of the ovary, it's just the appearance of the cells on here. So it doesn't play a major a logical function in the ovary. It is just its shape. So here is something that won't be that logical that I need to remember. So I try to match it. So I will keep it, yeah, kidney in the same location. So right, try to relate it to the kidney. So down in the just above the ovaries in the abdomen, we've got the kidneys. So below them, we've got the ovaries. So this is the way I recall it myself. So I have it in the ovary, in the outside outside surface of the ovary. Also, it's gonna be in the kidney tubules. So I've got 2 ovaries, 2 kidneys on top. So this is like, I relate them by location. Simple columnar epithelium. Simple columnar epithelium also was responsible for secretion and absorption, but this time those are larger, so I have better secretion, better absorption than simple cuboid. So I will need to absorb lots of stuff here. So what areas do I need to release and absorb lots of stuff? It's gonna be in the gastrointestinal tract, all the gastrointestinal tract except for the very first part that gets exposed to anything coming in first. So any part of the gastrointestinal tract from the stomach to the anal canal is going to be lined with non-ciliated simple columnar epithelium. This is the way I remember it. I'm allowing absorption and secretion, but to a greater extent compared to the simple cuboidal. Simple cuboidal is going to be allowing secretion and absorption in the kidney. Here I need more secretion, more absorption to take place. And where do I do this? I'm releasing lots of enzymes. I'm releasing lots of mucus. I'm absorbing all the nutrients, all the vitamins, all the fluid back from my gastrointestinal tract. This is going to be taking place in the gastrointestinal tract from the stomach to the anal canal. The second type of simple columnar epithelium, it was the ciliated simple columnar. And why do I have cilia? Remember, to allow the propulsion of the mucus, to allow the propulsion for them to move and push something. So remember, where did I need to push something? I need to push the fertilized egg in the uterine tubes and parts of the uterus. For a person to not develop an ectopic pregnancy. So I have it in the uterine tubes. I'm pushing the ovulated eggs that has been fertilized to be implanted in the cavity of the uterus. Where else do I have ciliated simple columnar epithelium? I have it in small parts of the airways, which are the distal bronchi and small bronchioles. Why do I need it in the small bronchioles? Because simply I need to push any mucus out of those airways. So think of it, ciliated simple columnar, it's going to be releasing the mucus. It's going to allow the propulsion of the mucus on here. It's going to allow the propulsion of the egg. So I remember location here from the appearance of the tissue. It has cilia, so it allows for propulsion. So where is it going to be located? Uterine tubes, parts of the uterus, and the small bronchioles. All right. See, pseudostratified columnar ciliated epithelium. Ciliated again, so I need propulsion. Remember, I did have in the small bronchioles, simple columnar ciliated. But as I keep going up, I need more cells to allow me to push the thicker mucus. So I need more cilia, more cilia, more cilia. So I need more cells. And if I need more cells, the cells are going to be crowded. So they will look as if they are stratified, as if they are many cell layers, but actually they are not. So the cells become so crowded, I need more cilia to push the thick mucus up in my airways. So it's going to be located in my upper airways. And most importantly, the trachea. This is where I will be pushing a lot of mucus out with the dust particles, with everything. So you see on here, more cells crowded with cilia. So I will need greater propulsion. Where do I need greater propulsion? Once the mucus accumulates on its way up. So it's going to be located in the upper respiratory tract and trachea. Many cell layers. And the apical cells, if you remember, as you kept moving up, the cells will become flat. That's why it's going to be stratified squamous epithelium. Why do I have squamous cells at the apex of the epithelium? Because simply as I keep moving up, I'm getting less nutrients and less oxygen. If I'm getting less nutrients and less oxygen when I'm moving up, what's going to happen? The cells will become flat, will become thin. So where do I need this type of tissue? And what's going to be its function? If I need the maximum number of cell layers, I am adding layers of cells. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to provide protection. And the question now, are you trying to build a lot of cells to the extent that the top cells are dying, or the top cells are still living? If the top cells are still living, this means I need, let's say, a 4 stars protection. If the cells at the top are dying, so I keep adding more and more cell layers, and even the cells are dying, I add more cell layers. So I need much more protection. So let's say put 5 stars protection on here. So think of it. If I have keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, this provides me with the maximum possible protection. So where do I need maximum possible protection in my body? The parts which are exposed to the outside. So what are the parts that are exposed to the outside? This is going to be my epidermis, the outermost layer of my skin. How about this one? I have high protection, many cell layers, but the top cells are still living. They didn't die to form the keratin layer. So it's a non-keratinized. So I need high protection, but not the maximum protection. So I have high protection, but not the maximum protection. High protection, but not the maximum protection. So it's not like the skin. It's exposed to the outside, but not all the time. Unlike the skin is always exposed to the outside. So what are areas that might get exposed to the outside, but not all the time? Like the upper part of my gastrointestinal tract, my oral cavity, my pharynx, and my esophagus. So I'm exposed from time to time to the outside. So I might get irritation, so I need a high level of protection. Also the vagina. Vagina gets exposed to the outside, but not all the time. All right, so I need high level of protection. This is the way I think of it in a logical way. So I have exposure to the outside all the time, so I need much greater protection. So I have keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. I have exposure to the outside from time to time, not all the time exposed to the outside, to some kind of irritation coming from outside, but not all the time, like the skin. So this will be applied to the oral cavity, to the pharynx, to the esophagus, to the vagina. So those are going to be aligned with non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. So why non-keratinized? Because it's not always exposed to the outside. It's not going to be dry. This is one other thing. Those sites are going to be moist. They are not dry like the skin. Seen many cell layers, and when we looked at the apical cells, we've seen some of them are cubed, some of them are flat, right? So what did we call this type of epithelium? We called it a transition epithelium. Why? Because it changes the shape of its cells. And where do I need to change the shape of my cells? Where I need to stretch the cells? Where do I need to allow stretch? I'm allowing stretch on a recurrent basis all day long, many times a day. I stretch and evacuate. Stretch and evacuate the urinary tract, the urinary bladder. It gets filled with urine, evacuates the urine out, so I return back to my original shape. So stretch, recoil, stretch, recoil, stretch, recoil. This is going to be allowed in the urinary tract. This includes the ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. Does this make sense so far, what I'm saying? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? So try to make it as logical as possible. So when you look at the tissue, its appearance serves its function, and its function tells you where it's located. It's a matter of logic, all right? So the more you understand it, the harder you're gonna forget it. All right. So it's going to be much easier to recall the information if it makes sense. If you break it down, make it in a logical, understand it in a logical way, so it will make perfect sense, so you won't get confused. One of the things that people get confused on here with is the transitional epithelium. So people will think, yeah, I allow stretch. And if I allow stretch, so what is the possible location? So they think uterus. But remember, it's not uterus that I have the transition in. Why? Because they think the uterus gets stretched during pregnancy. But actually, it's not going to be stretching and recoiling like the urinary tract. It takes 9 months to stretch the uterus. So you've got a chance to build up cells. You don't need cells to stretch. What you need are more cells to be built. And you have enough time to build your cells. All right, so the uterus doesn't have transitional epithelium. This is one of the most common wrong answers I see on this exam. Uterus, it's not lined with transitional epithelium. All right. So again, where transitional epithelium, it's not located. Can you answer this for me, just to make sure that everybody got this? Where is the transitional epithelium? It's not located. Anybody? Can I see some answers on here? It's not located in the uterus. It's not located in the uterus. All right. Not in the uterus. It's in the urinary tract. Urethra, urinary bladder, and ureter. All right, not the uterus. All right, so we've discussed also the connective tissues. Connective tissue, I have fibers. So try to make it also as logical as possible. Try to make it as logical as possible. So what are the characteristics of the areolar connective tissue as we've discussed? It's a loose type of connective tissue. I did have those thick bundles of fibers, my collagen fibers, and I have thin, darkly stained long fibers, and I'll have the most important part is that I have lots of spaces between those fibers. It's a loose connective tissue. So why do I need lots of spaces between the fibers? Its shape, its appearance serves its function. And from the function, you will know the location. So I need lots of spaces to allow fluids to travel. So I might accumulate fluid causing edema. This is one thing. So fluid accumulates in here. But also I need fluid to travel to the epithelium above me. Remember, epithelium is avascular. So it gets its nutrients, remember, and oxygen by diffusion from the underlying tissue. So what is the type of tissues that I have below the epithelium? It should be a type of connective tissue that has lots of spaces for the fluid to travel, all right? So what is the location of the areolar connective tissue? It has lots of spaces to do what? To allow the fluid to travel. So where do I need the fluid to travel? I need it to travel to go to the epithelium. So it's going to be located under the epithelium. And where is the epithelium located? Can you remind me? Everywhere. Epithelium is forming the linings and coverings of all your organs and body surfaces under epithelium. So where is it located? It's widely distributed in the body, wrapping your organs under the epithelium. This is the location that is stated for the areolar connective tissue. Why is it wrapping my organs? Why is it widely distributed in the body because it's located under the epithelium. And why is it located under the epithelium? Because you have lots of spaces between the fibers, which will allow the fluids to travel to the epithelium. And why do I need it under the epithelium? Especially the epithelium, because the epithelium is avascular. It relies on the areolar connective tissue to get its nutrients and oxygen. If I did have something like this, fibers are closely packed against one another, I don't have spaces between the fibers, there is no way the fluid can travel up to my epithelium. So I need a type of connective tissues that allows the fluid to travel up to my epithelium. And as it is located below the epithelium, it's going to be located where? Everywhere in the body. Because epithelium is located everywhere. It forms the coverings and linings of all body surfaces and organs. All right? All organs are covered and lined with epithelium. So underneath each of them, you're going to have what kind of connective tissues that allows them to survive? Areolar connective tissue. So when you read the location, it makes perfect sense. It's widely distributed in the body, lamina propria, under the epithelium. Why is it under epithelium again? Allowing flow to the epithelium. I see large vacuolated cells. The appearance of the cells will tell me what is the tissue. So those large vacuolated cells are having large empty space. This empty space inside the cell, it was actually filled with fat. So this is my adipose tissue. So why would I accumulate fat? And where do I accumulate fat? So why do I accumulate fat? To have insulation, to store the energy that I'm consuming. And where is it located? All the fat, all the body fat that you can see, it's gonna be below the skin. Below the skin. This is the fat that you can't feel it in your body. This is the one that you have everywhere. It's widely distributed below your skin, below the skin, hypo below. Derma skin. So we call below the skin subcutaneous or hypodermis. Hypodermis means subcutaneous. Sub below cutaneous skin. Hypodermis, below the skin. What else? I need fat to keep the abdominal organs in their place. To keep the abdominal organs in their place. So I have it around the abdominal organs. Not inside the abdominal organs, I have it around the abdomen, around the abdominal organs to keep the organs in place. Think of it, think of the adipose tissue, it's like the foam that you use for insulation in your house and for filling, keeping stuff in place. So it's going to be holding the kidneys in their place. So they are located around the abdominal organs like the kidneys. Where else? In the breast, around the mammary glands. So think, where is it located? It's located everywhere below my skin, hypodermis, around the abdominal organs and in the breast. About this one. This might get some of you confused. So I see what on this tissue. I see those branching cells. And if you remember those branching, those branching fibers, what did we call those short branching darkly stained fibers? Those are my reticular fibers. And what did I see everywhere around those reticular fibers? If you remember, everywhere around the reticular fibers, I did have lots and lots of blood cells. So let me go and review this slide with you on here. See, lots and lots of blood cells. So think, is this the blood? In the blood, do I see fibers like this, those branching fibers? No, it's not my blood. It's not my blood. My blood doesn't have those fibers. So where do I have lots of blood cells? Not in the blood. Where? This is a question that I need to ask myself to remember location. Where do I have lots of blood cells? Not in the blood. The answer is in my lymphoid organs. Like what? Like the spleen. Why do I have blood cells in the spleen? Because this is where I activate white blood cells. In the lymph nodes, when I get an infection, when I have an infection, I have swollen lymph nodes. Why? Because I have cell proliferation. Immune cells are proliferating to fight this infection in my lymph nodes. What else? In the site where I am producing the blood cells from. So where do I produce the blood cells from? They are produced from my bone marrow. So where do I have lots of blood cells? Those are the blood cells that will tell me the location. Blood cells are located where? In the bloodstream, but I'm not looking at the bloodstream because the bloodstream doesn't have reticular fibers. So what I think of, what are the other sites that I have lots of blood cells not in my bloodstream? This is a question that will tell me the location. So looking at this, I will figure out it's my bone marrow where I actually produce the blood cells from. And where do I store the blood cells? I store the blood cells, the white blood cells, in my spleen and lymph nodes. This is where they will become activated to fight the infections. Having just white blood cells without passing through the activation process in my lymph nodes, they won't be functioning. They won't have any effect on getting rid of the pathogen. All right, so what do we call all those three collectively? We call those are the lymphoid organs. So actually the slide tells you where it's located. You see on here, I have blood cells, not in the bloodstream. So this means what for me? This means I'm looking at a lymphoid organ. This is where I have blood cells without, not inside the bloodstream. All right, spleen, bone marrow, and lymph nodes. How about this one? The thick bundles, collagen fibers, no spaces in between. So this is what? This is regular, dense, and they have regular pattern. All right, so you're able to figure out the regular dense from the irregular dense. Remember, regular dense. When I pull on here, so think of it, what kind of organ has those regular collagen fibers that builds up its structure? Remember, function of the dense regular, it's gonna be to allow tension in one direction. I'm able to allow tension in one direction. So where do I allow tension in one direction? Where? Remember when you train your biceps in the gym, you're gonna be training the biceps like this, not like this. Why? Because you are afraid to rupture your tendons. So where do I need to apply to allow tension in one direction? In the tendons and in the ligaments. So what are the tendons? Those are the connective tissue that will be attaching the muscle to the bone. So I allow tension in how many directions again? One direction. Muscle to a bone. How about a ligament? A ligament attachment between two bones. The attachment between two bones. So I need to allow tension also in one direction for those two bones to not be pulled apart. It's holding them together. So where do I have dense regular connective tissue or regular dense connective tissue? Remember, it allows tension in one direction only because it has a regular pattern of arrangement. And where do I need to allow tension in one direction only? Tendons and in the ligaments between the bones. Irregular, you see, fibers are going in every direction. See, all those are different directions that the fibers are moving in. So from its appearance, I can see that it's a dense, irregular connective tissue and that the fibers are traveling in many directions. So it allows tension to take place in how many directions? So I can't allow tension in this direction like this if I'm dealing with dense regular. Why? Because the fibers are traveling only in this direction. But in the irregular dense connective tissue, you see, I have fibers traveling up, I have fibers traveling down, up, down, to the sides, all directions. So what is the function, as we've discussed, of the dense irregular? Dense irregular allows tension in many directions. Many directions. If I have tensions, if I can accommodate tension in many directions, where am I located? Think of where do you can you pull without having rupture? Think where I can pull and don't have rupture. So I can pull the tendon in many directions and not rupture. But I can pull on my skin. You see, I can pull on my skin, all right? Without having any rupture. So in the skin, where exactly in the skin? In the dermis of the skin, I can pull without rupture. But I did move the joint in many directions without having rupture of the joint capsule, right? So it's not gonna be dense regular. It's not gonna be any other type of connective tissue because I need a type of tissue that allows tension in many directions. I'm moving my joint in many directions without having any rupture of the joint. So I have it in the joint capsule. Where else? When I'm running, boom, 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 boom. What's gonna happen? All my organs in the abdomen are moving up and down, moving slightly to the sides, up and down. So why the connective tissue that is surrounding those organs did not rupture? Because what kind of tissue allows, again, tension, accommodating tension in many directions? What tissue are we looking at now? Are you still awake? Are you still awake with me? What is the one that will allow tension in many directions? Only one still awake? 2, 3, 4. Yeah, here we go. Dense irregular. Dense irregular. So where again do I have dense irregular? In my organs. In my organs, but not inside the organ, surrounding the organ. So what do we call the connective tissue around the abdominal organs that will keep moving up and down to the sides? If I'm running, if I'm moving, it's gonna be the organ capsule. Easy. Anything doesn't make sense so far? Anything doesn't make sense? Anything doesn't make sense so far? So when you study, every time you study, think of why do I have it in those organs? Every time you study. When you study, think, why do I have it in those organs? And when you think why it is located in those organs, it's gonna be you are reinforcing your memory. You're making it logical, it makes sense, and once it makes sense, you will be able to recall it later on. All right, so this is very, very important point. So when you think, don't just try to memorize it. So dense irregular, it's located in the dermis of the skin, in the organ capsule, in the joint capsule, and you kept repeating it without thinking of why is it located in those organs. What's gonna happen just next day or even an hour from now after you study, you can't remember because it didn't make sense. So very important to make sense of the information. Ask some questions, why, how for everything. All right, why and how, why and how. All right, when you ask the question why and how, you are understanding. All right, this is in my opinion, even better than just using mnemonics. So when you are using mnemonics, you are relating like to the information to sounds, to a sequence of letters. I believe the best thing in order to be able to retain the information, it's to ask why and how. Once you understand why and how, you will be able to recall the information much easier because you have reinforced this information in your mind. All right, so when we look here, dense irregular connective tissue, pulling many directions. Where do I need many directions to be pulled on? In my skin, in my joint capsule, in my organ capsule. Remember, we've seen thin, darkly stained lung fibers. Thin, darkly stained lung fibers are closely packed against one another. Let me remind you of how this looked like. Thin, darkly stained lung fibers, those are my elastic fibers. Elastic fibers. And those elastic fibers, from their name, they are going to be doing what? And why do I need them? Why do I need them? This is my question, first question. Why do I need a lot of elastic fibers? I need elastic for elasticity, right? So what's going to be the function here? The function is going to be to stretch, not only stretch, and recoil. So when you have an elastic band, its function, it's not only to stretch and remain stretched. When you stretch it, it recoils. You stretch it, it recoils. Any elastic band, all right? So this is the same concept when we were looking at elastic connective tissue. Elastic connective tissue is many elastic bands. All right, so what's the function? It's to allow stretch, and when you stretch it, it do what? It will be doing what? It recoils. So where do I need to stretch for the organ to recoil next? Stretch it, it recoils. Stretch it, it recoils. If you remember, we needed this in the bronchi of the airways. So when you breathe in, air travels in, you stretch the airways, you stretch your lungs. And this is when I breathe in, stretch airways, stretch my lungs. Do I need it to be kept stretched like this all the time? Yeah. What you're gonna do, under the effect of this elastic tissue, under the effect of the elastic tissue, the lung and airways will recoil, and when they recoil, they will do what to the air that you did breathe in? You move it out. So it's gonna be located in my airways, in the wall of my bronchi, in the lungs. It makes sense. Why do I have it in those locations? Because you need to stretch, not only to stretch, but also to recoil, to squeeze the air out. All right, so where else? More important location, if you remember. The most common wrong answers that I see here for elastic connective tissue, can you tell me what is the most common wrong answer for elastic connective tissue? Can you guess what is the most common wrong answer for the location of the elastic connective tissue? Any guesses? Urinary tract. This is a good one. Uterus. Yeah, those are common, but not the most common. Those are common, but not the most common. What do you think? All right, so what is another location? So I will see if somebody will answer it as a good answer. What is the location other than the airways and the lungs of the elastic connective tissue? What is a good location? Another good location here for elastic connective tissue without looking at your aorta. Yeah. What else? Arches. Ears. Ears is another common wrong answer. Another common wrong answer. Ear is elastic cartilage, not just elastic. Ear is another common wrong answer. Ear is another common wrong answer. It's elastic cartilage, right? It's cartilage. It supports the shape, but it's flexible, right? And vagina, and it has some elastic tissue, but it's not like a commonplace. No, it has very minimal elastic vagina. As you mentioned, the most common location where I have a lot of elastic connective tissue is going to be the wall of the major arteries. If you remember, why do I need it? For me to maintain the pulsatile blood flow, for me to expand the arteries during ventricular contraction. When my ventricles contract, expand the arteries, and the arteries will recoil to squeeze the blood when my ventricles are relaxed. The most common wrong answers that I usually see, it's the heart. Over the years, over the last 7 years, the single most common wrong answer I usually see for the elastic connective tissue, it's the heart. I'm not sure why. Maybe because I think it expands the recoils, or because we mention the heart here, or because people will remember the image here of the heart, maybe. But over the years, the single most common wrong answer, it was the heart. This is the single most common wrong answer for this, for the location of the elastic connective tissue. Again, we don't have it in the heart. All right, not the heart. Where is it located? Again, as you mentioned, the aorta and its major branches, the large arches. Only the aorta and its major branches, because the heart is contracting, it's not expanding and recoils. It's a muscle, it contracts. It's not like an elastic band, it just recoils. It contracts actually, so it's not in the heart, it's not in the heart. Uterus, of course, uterus doesn't expand and recoil because it's a muscle, the same concept. Urinary tract, all those are muscles. So I am not just stretching and recoiling, I'm contracting. So urinary tract, uterus, all those are muscles. And if you remember, what kind of muscles do I have in here? Uterus, urinary tract, what kind of muscles do I have? Is it skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, or smooth muscle? What do you think? So all those are hollow organs, so all of them are smooth muscles. So when we've seen the cartilage, we've seen 3 types of cartilage, if you remember. And we did identify the cartilage by having chondrocytes in those spaces, chondrocytes in leg. This provides me with a hard structure. All right, I don't see fibers. It's the hyaline cartilage. Here a cartilage with thin, long, darkly stained fibers. Remember, these are my elastic fibers. This was the elastic cartilage. It allows me to support the shape, to form the shape of the structure, but also it provides me with great flexibility. So I'm forming the shape, but allowing flexibility. Here for the fibrocartilage, I have extra fibers, collagen fibers in between the chondrocytes. So what is going to be the function here is to absorb more compression. So when I apply compression on here, I have more fibers that can absorb this compression. So here absorbs compression. So where do I have cartilage? In the body, nose, larynx, trachea, and in the trachea, rings of the trachea. Those ones I'm touching in here. Below my Adam's apple, we have the trachea on here, down. I have covering the articular surfaces of my bones. So all those are going to be of hyaline type. Nose, nasal cartilages, then you've got the larynx, the voice box, Adam's apple, and then you've got the tracheal rings of the trachea that keeps the trachea patent open all the time. Unlike the esophagus, it doesn't collapse. Trachea is kept open all the time by the presence of those cartilage rings. Where else? Attaching my ribs to the sternum. This is my sternum like this, down here. And those are my ribs, like this. So attaching my ribs to the sternum on here, those are my costal cartilages, and my costal cartilages are going to be formed by hyaline cartilage as well. So those are sites where I have hyaline cartilage, also covering the articular surfaces of my bone in any joint. So think of it, I'm providing a hard structure. I don't need flexibility. I don't need to absorb any compression. So you don't apply compression on your nose. You're not applying compression on your larynx. You're not applying compression on your ribs, on the attachment between your ribs and the sternum. There is no compression. You don't need great flexibility in your chest. So when you're lying down, your chest, if it was flexible, if you did have elastic cartilage, it will be, your lungs gonna be compressed. In your joints, all your joints, you don't apply compression on all your joints. Don't apply compression on all your joints. So you need just a smooth surface that doesn't get inflamed. So you see on here, I'm providing you with a hard structure, but I'm not flexible and I'm not absorbing any compressive shock. All right, so this works fine. All those locations are good for the hyaline cartilage. It makes sense to have just hyaline cartilage. I don't need flexibility. I don't need to absorb compressive shock in all those locations. I need just a strong structure. All right, that doesn't get inflamed. Where do I need a cartilage that maintains the shape of the structure, but in the same time provides me with great flexibility? In my ear pinna, my external ear, you see how flexible is the ear, but you still have its shape. You still have a definitive shape, unlike a blood vessel. If you've got a blood vessels, for comparing to the elastic connective tissue, it's, once you compress it, it remains compressed. But when you bend your ear pinna, it returns back to its normal shape. So here is a difference between elastic connective tissue and elastic cartilage. Remember, elastic cartilage, it's maintaining the shape. All right, fibrocartilage. So what else do I have? I'm sorry, what else do I have? Elastic cartilage, remember, I do have it in a cartilage located above the larynx. So why do I have it as elastic cartilage? Because I need it to bend and returns back to its shape. Bends, returns back to its shape. Why do I need to bend? When food is trying to move into my airways, so it bends, moves down, like this. When food is traveling in, it's gonna be bent down to close my airways for the food to keep going into my esophagus. All right, so I need something that is flexible, but is also capable to maintain the shape. Fibrocartilage. Why do I need fibrocartilage? Again, to absorb compression. And where do I need compression? Where do I need to absorb compression? Where do I apply compression in my body the most? Between the vertebrae. Every time you are moving, your vertebrae are compressing one another. So I need something in between that absorbs this compression. What do we call the cartilage between the vertebrae? Intervertebral disc. Where else? I'm applying compression. I'm applying lots of compression in my knee joint. So I need fibrocartilage to be located in here to absorb the compression. All right. So makes sense here. Where do I have those three cartilages, three different types of cartilage? Does it make sense? Why do I have each one of them? Yes, no? All right, so again, hyaline cartilage, hard, not flexible, don't need to absorb compression. So like your nose, your larynx, your trachea, costal cartilage. Articular surfaces are covered with hyaline cartilage. Elastic cartilage in my ear pinna, my epiglottis. Fibrocartilage, intervertebral discs, and knee. Bone tissue, once you identify bone, it's going to be in your bone. So once you know that this is a bone tissue, you're going to simply say it's located in my bones. You don't have a problem with it. Blood also, you don't have a problem with the location of the blood. Where is it located? It's located circulating in my blood vessels. Muscles. So muscle tissue, we've got, once you identify skeletal muscle, and how do we identify skeletal muscle tissue? I'm formed of cylindrical muscle cells, which are striated, and each one has more than one nucleus. I'm multi-nucleated. This is skeletal muscle tissue. Where is it located? It's located in the skeletal muscles under voluntary control. And the skeletal muscles are either attached to bones or they are attached to skin. Why to the bones? To allow movement. Why to the skin? For facial expression. Cardiac muscle. The key here that differentiates between skeletal and cardiac is that the cardiac muscle cells are branching. Cardiac muscle cells are branching. And where do I have the cardiac muscle tissue? In the walls of my heart. Smooth muscle under involuntary control, no striations, spindle-shaped muscle cells, and it's located in the wall of all hollow organs except for the heart. So think of it, it's under involuntary control, and not in the heart, because in the heart I have cardiac muscle tissue. So what are the other organs that contain muscles under involuntary control other than the heart? Everything else. The diameter of my blood vessels is going to be determined according to the tone of the smooth muscle in the blood vessel. The uterus, muscles of the uterus are going to be contracting under involuntary control. My stomach, my small intestine, large intestine, the ureters, gallbladder, all those are organs that have cavities and they have muscles so they can contract. And those are not under voluntary control, so they are not skeletal, and they are not heart, so they are not cardiac. So if I'm not under voluntary control, it's not skeletal. And if I'm not the heart, so it's not cardiac. So anything else that is under involuntary control and can contract, it's gonna be formed by smooth muscle tissue. All right. Nervous tissue, if you remember, nervous tissue is gonna be located in your brain, spinal cord, and nerves, and this is how those nervous organs gonna be conducting the electrical signals that get formed by those nerve cells or neurons. All right. Questions? Any questions? All right, so you can see on here. So under the module that is called Lab Exams Review Documents, you're gonna see tissues sample questions, and those are like sample questions for you to get an idea about how the question is gonna be addressed on the exam. All right, so would you help me with this, please? Here. So let us go over this as a quick overview of the tissues. All right, so you are the one who are answering now. So what do you think? What is the type of tissues that you see on here? What's the type of tissue? Simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium. And what's the location of simple squamous epithelium? Location of simple squamous epithelium. What is it? Lining of the blood vessels. Lining of the blood vessels. Air sacs. Lining of the chambers of the heart, All those are good answers for good locations for simple squamous epithelium. And what is the function here? Glomeruli of the kidney. What is the function of the tissue on here? Minimal resistance and I need this minimal resistance to allow filtration, to allow gas exchange. All right, so I need not to have resistance. I need minimal resistance, and this means for me filtration, gas exchange, passage of the nutrients, and so on. All right, so what's the type of tissue on here that we're looking at? What do you think? Dense regular or regular dense connective tissue. Great, great. Collagen fibers, they have regular pattern of arrangement. And can you remind me, location of the dense regular connective tissue? Remember, I can pull in one direction, right? One direction, it's gonna be tendons and ligaments. Joint capsule, remember you can move your joint in many directions without having rupture, right? So joint capsule, you can move your joints in many directions without having rupture. So it's not regular, it's gonna be irregular, right? So not joint capsule, tendons and ligaments. And what do we call the cell that is producing all the fibers on here? Do you remember? What do we call the cells that are producing the fibers? Fibroblasts, exactly. Fibroblasts. All right, so looking on here. Reticular connective tissue. And what is the location of the reticular connective tissue? Can you remind me, please? You've got lots of blood cells outside of the bloodstream. Lots of blood cells outside of the bloodstream. Where did we have this? Bone marrow, spleen, lymph node. Those are lymphoid organs. Remember, what is the type of the fibers on here? Short branching fibers, remember? Like a tree. Those are my reticular fibers. Well, this one, can you remind me what's this tissue? What type of tissue is it? It's my nervous tissue, exactly. Nervous tissue. And how about this one? What type of tissue is this? Blood. Can you tell me here, what is this cell that has a dark periphery and pale center? Dark periphery and pale center, what did we call this cell? It's my red blood cell or erythrocyte. And can you remind me, what is the type of blood cells that has a nucleus that is large, occupying most of the size of the cell? Highly active cell, highly important immune cells. This is my lymphocyte. Lymphocyte. All right, what kind of tissue are we looking at in here that looks like a transverse section in a tree? Yes, osseous tissue or bone tissue. Osseous or bone tissue. What's the name of the cell in here? That is I'm pointing to. What is the name of the mature bone cell? This is my osteocyte. Osteocyte. It looks as if I have many cell layers, but when I looked at the apical cells, they are huge. So can they be stratified columnar? Do we have something called stratified columnar? What do you think? Can this be stratified columnar? No, we don't have something called stratified columnar. So what is it? It's a false stratified, pseudo stratified, columnar, ciliated epithelium. Pseudo stratified, columnar, ciliated epithelium. And what was the location? If you remember, I need huge number of cilia. Cells are crowded, many cilia. So where do I need this? To push the maximum amount of mucus with dust particles from my trachea and my upper respiratory tract. Exactly. And what was the function? To do what? Release mucus and allows the propulsion of this mucus. All right. Move on here. What kind of tissue can I see on here? Spindle-shaped cells. Each cell has a single nucleus. Single nucleus. I'm not striated. I'm mononucleated. It's a smooth muscle tissue. And can you remind me what is the location here for the smooth muscle tissue? Walls of all hollow organs except for the heart. Walls of all hollow organs except for the heart. Can you remind me what did we call this tissue? It was large, empty, or vacuolated cells on here. This is my adipose connective tissue. And can you tell me some locations on here for the adipose connective tissue? Around what organs? Abdominal organs. Around abdominal organs. And breasts and hypodermis or subcutaneous tissue. All right, so around abdominal organs, hypodermis, under the skin, and in the breast. All right. Any questions for me? All right, so if you don't have any further questions today, this completes our discussion. This completes our discussion. And So yes, chapter 2. Do you have question about chapter 2? So Kimberly, number 1, you mean the question number 1? It's a simple squamous epithelium. All right, so Andrea is, yeah, the rest is gonna be covered in another video. I meant by this that the one in chapter 3. So if you remember at the end of chapter 3, what did we cover? We covered the DNA structure and RNA structure. We've covered the transcription and translation. This is the remaining part of chapter 2 that we've discussed at the end of chapter 3. All right. This is the other videos that I was referring to. All right. So if you've watched chapter 3, so you're going to be in good shape. All right. So what is the video recording that we need to cover for the next meeting? So if you didn't complete chapter 2, please get chapter 2 completed. Chapter 2, part 1 and 2. And chapter 5, part 1 and 2. So chapter 2 and chapter 5 for this week. All right. All right. So what we are covering for our meeting next week are going to be chapter 2 and chapter 5. Chapter 5 is the 2 parts, and chapter 2 it's just going to be 1 part because the other part is covered by chapter 3. So Kimberly, sir, I know I should know this, but does the lecture exam include? Yes, it includes chapter 4. Lecture exam includes chapter 1, 3, 4, and to a less extent, chapter 2. All right, so the lecture exam is focusing on chapter 1, 3, and 4, and to a less extent, chapter 2. It has questions from chapter 2, but I'm not putting, yeah, look, so it's not going to be representing like 25% of the exam. It's going to be less, much less than this. All right, so chapter 1, 3, and 4. All right, and to a less extent, chapter 2. All right, questions? Can you make this class recording available? This really helpful. All right, so no problem. If you wanted it, so I can send it for you like personally. So just send me a message on Canvas now, and I will be sending you out the link. So what I'm trying to avoid is to create confusion. All right. What I'm trying to avoid is to create confusion for all the people. All right. So because the main video recordings, those contain all the information necessary. I don't want to people think that this is new information or something. All right. All right, great. So let me send this out. Just send me a message on Canvas now, and once I upload it on YouTube, I will be sending you the link. All right, for any of you who wants a video recording of this meeting. All right. Any other questions for me? Any other questions? All right, so yeah, just send me an email, a message on Canvas, and I will reply with the link to the video as it gets uploaded. All right, it will be rendering for about like an hour, and then it will take another hour to upload. So it should be available in 2 hours. So I will be replying within 2 hours with the link for you. All right. Thank you so much. Tissue repair and glandular epithelium, it's not going to be on the lab exam, but it's going to be covered. It's going to be covered in the lecture exam. So for chapter 4, glandular epithelium, it's not going to be covered in the lab exam. And the tissue repair is not covered in the lab exam, but both topics are covered in the lecture exam. All right. The tests are open. Yeah, they should have been opened by now. It should have been opened by now. Just a reminder, the lab exam is gonna be accessed through, see on here, when you press on Smarter Proctoring, you see the very first tab on the left side. It's gonna be available through Smarter Proctoring. So when you press on Smarter Proctoring, I know it won't open here. You will see proctored lab exam is going to be available from 24 to October 3rd. All right. So it has been available from the 24th. Today is the 26th, I believe. It has been available for the last 2 days, and it's going to close on October 3rd. Quizzes also going to close as scheduled on October 3rd. Let me just make sure that everything is correct before we leave. So the module 1 assigned activities, module 1 assigned activities, you see on here, all of them are gonna close October 3rd. Lecture exam 1, chapter 1, 4, 3, 2, and the proctored lab exam. So all of them gonna be due October 3rd. Yes. All right. Thank you so much for making it to the meeting today. And we'll see you, all of you, next week. Thank you so much. And stay safe, stay healthy. And good luck with your exam. Thank you.